I don't know. Quick, lads, the internet's on fire. Michal, go get the water.
Just a big ball of water on all over our monitors, yeah.
Oh, aye. Right. Check my channel there. The Tudor and the downfall of Gaelic Ireland from 1530 to 1603. What a topic to be talking about today.
Today and the next month.
You mean we
just go on.
can't cover all that information in 2 hour live?
Yeah. I can't be naming names though.
If we're lucky, we'll finish the siege of Maynooth Castle tonight.
Siege of Maynooth Castle. No, we'll just power through it as quick as we can. I'll give it a few minutes there for people to start joining in. Maybe I should have bloody advertised it more. I keep because sometimes when I advertise it more, people are more here on time, like a whip. So you know when I put out the old short saying tonight go to blah blah blah. How are you keeping, Dennis?
Hi, Dennis.
See, Dennis knew what to be on time. He's seen Tudor Ireland and was just here on time, like ready for the old currents and gallo glass warfare.
Hope the weather down in Kinsale is nice. We actually had a bit of sun today.
Oh, you had a bit of sun. I looked at the news and I seen you guys just covered in rain.
Yeah, but you're looking in the wrong place.
Good evening, Kat. Hi, Dave.
Is your sound a bit off there, Owen?
Is my sound better now? Hold on.
It sounds grand on my side, but I think from the once it goes through onto YouTube side, there must be something up with it. I think it depends. Dennis, is it too loud or too quiet on Owen's side? How are you keeping, boys? How are you keeping? Good evening. How is everyone tonight?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm just plodding along, getting ready for Christmas.
Talking about warfare and stuff, the Wars of the Roses. We'll just talk about the wee background there of the Tudor conquest of Ireland before we start plowing on to the main meat of the subject. It's interesting, all right, because the Wars of the Roses is kind of where we start to see the seeping in of the Tudors when the Tudors start to re-establish themselves back onto the island of Ireland again. Because before then, just way before then again, you can obviously see the Irish kind of taking back and reoccupying the Ireland in a way during the Gaelic resurgence of Ireland. And even in many regards, with Art MacMor Cavanagh around 1370, taking the Black Rent from Dublin in 1370, highlights the success of the Gaelic resurgence on the island, but there's never like a proper boot to the English. The English never get a hard kick off the island. So they're kind of still within the Pale itself and still kind of have their, hands and, whatever, their fangs onto the island itself and being able to pull themselves back into Irish politics. And you can see that happening at the end of the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, after the fighting between the Fitzgeralds and the Butlers, when the Tudors are successful after the Battle of Stokefield, when the Fitzgeralds failed to put on, the English academics would put it, failed to put their puppet on the seat of the crown of England, allowing the Tudors to be able to re-establish themselves in Dublin again after the Tudor conquest of Ireland. And with that, they're able to put in 1494 to 1495, able to re-establish Poyning's Law and take control of the Irish Parliament once again after the Wars of the Roses in Ireland. Would you agree with that one? And that allows the Tudors to start getting back onto the island again, as Owen was saying last week. The Tudor conquest of Ireland not being an invasion itself, because of the fact that the Tudors were able to re-establish themselves back onto the island of Ireland after the Wars of the Roses.
Yeah. Hi, Kira. Hi, everybody. Hope my sound is a bit better now. One point that people often don't make is that
Mm,
the Tudors, especially Henry VIII and Elizabeth, were very, very
mm,
centralizing. Perhaps
mm, mm,
the Wars of the Roses left them mentally scarred in a way because you had these lords, these were potentates, whatever you want to call them. They had their own private military forces, and you had, I don't know, was it 100 years of fighting?
mm,
I don't know how many kings got killed because I get very confused with the
mm,
changeover of English monarchs during the War of the Roses. Um, Whereas in Ireland, when Henry VIII takes power, you
mm,
have a more structured and a better organized system in many ways. You have
mm,
powerful lords who don't get on, like Ormond and Kildare,
mm,
but it's all kind of balanced and it's working out quite well.
mm,
Like Kildare manages to bring down a lot of the, should we say, Gaelic rebellions, Gaelic fightings, because he's he's the great Earl's sister, I think, is Shane O'Neill's mother. So he
mm,
married into O'Neill, and another one would have married. So between, like, Henry VII was a bit of a shock to the House of Kildare, but they still managed to get on.
mm,
They still controlled the Lord Deputyship.
mm,
And England, Henry VII knows better, and he
mm,
doesn't really interfere much in Ireland because he doesn't want to. As
mm.
long as they don't, even when they did send over, it was wasn't it two mini invasions, Perkin Warbeck and someone else whose name I can't remember, two pretenders, or um, but they get over that.
Mm.
Henry VIII
Was it
comes in.
Simnel? Sorry.
Yeah.
That's it, Lambert Simnel, yeah. Henry VIII comes in and manages to antagonize the House of Kildare.
Mm,
Uh, he also changes religion, closes down the monastery, starts making big changes, and the House of Kildare rebels, and he has to send a big army, which costs a lot of money. You have you could say it's the first modern siege in Irish history is the siege of
Waterford or
Maynooth.
Kilkenny.
Maynooth.
Aye.
Uh, and it takes a year or so, despite the big army, it takes a year or so to crush Kildare.
Mm,
But and then in the end, like they're treated very badly. Um, Silken Thomas's uncles are all executed. Silken Thomas is executed as well, isn't he? Yeah, like the House of
mm,
Kildare is overthrown. But from that point on, you just have chaos until
mm.
1603.
Yeah, that's very true as well. Um, yeah, that went very quick into the Silken Thomas rebellion. All right, and there's no real point I'd love to highlight there because you kind of ticked all the boxes very quickly on that one. After the Silken Thomas rebellion, there's nothing, Mihal, you want to cover there as well with the Silken Thomas rebellion, is there? And I'll just pop over to the comment section. Hey guys, thanks for those comments
So
as well.
just one point before that is
Yeah.
that Henry VIII becomes King of Ireland. Uh,
He does. That
you
would be
have a
around
movement.
1541.
You have a movement, and a lot of it starts with the Old English or Anglo-Irish.
Mm,
Not so much the big lords,
mm,
but sort of the middle class, lawyers and stuff like that, officials. They're influenced by Renaissance humanism, and they
mm,
kind of want to bring a lot of this stuff in. And they get the idea that Henry VIII shall become King of Ireland, which he
mm,
does.
mm,
And one thing in that is that everybody in Ireland now becomes a subject.
mm,
Previously, Ireland was divided among the king's friends, his citizens, basically the English, the Irish English, the Old English, and the king's enemies, the Gaelic Irish. Now they're all citizens. There
mm,
is the famous Surrender Grant is launched
mm,
with some success, but nothing is consistent. Things keep changing, policies keep changing, and the
mm,
Tudors are they send over Lord Deputy, but Lord Deputies who do too well get in trouble.
mm, mm, mm,
And a fair amount of Lord Deputies are executed or end up in the tower.
mm, mm.
I will just add then, because like say Owen has kind of touched on pretty much everything quite well, but this is a point as well where we start to see Ireland viewed as a potential backdoor for Spanish and French influence and
Mm,
interests in England. So they start to shift that policy as well in the Tudor period, where they start to look at under Henry VIII that it could potentially be influenced, obviously with the change of religion, all the dynamics that sort of come into play, but it starts to become sort of a security risk that Ireland
mm,
might be used by their enemies in Europe to gain access to um, uh, England. So you start to see that focus as well during the Tudor period, especially under Henry VIII.
mm, mm. True.
Unfortunately, the English were much more aware of that or much more afraid of that uh, problem than the Spanish and or French were able to take
Yeah,
advantage of it. So that the
yeah.
English, like under Elizabeth, they were terrified of it.
Mm,
But the Spanish had their hands full, and the French, throughout most of this period, were fighting a very long religious civil war.
mm.
Mm.
You also
Someone's
have the
sorry, Caveman is asking a question about Brehon law. Was
mm,
Brehon law still active at this time?
mm,
It was. It was in part. They would call it Irish law, Gaelic law. It was still being in use. You could find Brehons. It's it's still active until I think around 1608, 1609. After
mm,
the defeat of Hugh O'Neill, Chichester, the new Lord Deputy, and John Davis, the Attorney General, I think, or Solicitor General, they take cases in Dublin, legal cases, and they essentially outlaw some of the most important parts of Gaelic law, such as land succession, etc.
mm,
Um, like Brehon law is quite different from English law. I don't want to get into the question of feudalism. It wasn't feudal, but I don't know whether feudalism would apply to Tudors. I don't think so. And just another short question: how important are the Tudor fiefs for historians? They are very important because, for example, there is one to do with the Treaty of Mellifont and the pardoning of Hugh O'Neill, and you can see it basically names all the followers, all the lesser lords. So
mm,
it's a very good way of finding out who's who, because in some it'll name out individually all these guys. You've got a big long list of names, so you can work out who's who. It's they're hard to work with, and they're not really available online, unfortunately.
mm,
But they're a good source.
mm. Yeah, I know Caveman was it yesterday was looking all right to cover, and we might do it next week actually, is the changes in Brehon law going from the early medieval period into the late medieval period. Those changes and shifting that happens during the High Middle Ages with the arrival of the Normans. That does seem like an interesting topic. All right, I wouldn't really know where to start when it comes down to that sort of research, because I was saying that to you last week, wasn't I, Owen? About it's kind of out of my field of expertise. Like, don't get me wrong, I find it very interesting, and I have come across it a good few times reading and everything. What is those changes going from the when you're going through that era of the High Middle Ages with the Norman invasion. So I wouldn't mind doing that topic actually next week, unless
Yeah,
you guys want
it's
to cover something
one
else.
that is hard to pin stuff down on because Gaelic literature, they loved making things seem archaic
Mm,
and they loved hiding change. So you really have to get piles of documents and read through the documents and then kind of guess.
no. Yeah.
That is the problem. When people say Brehon law is this was a Brehon law. It may have been at some stage, but just because it was a law, who enacted it, who enforced it, and then throw in the arrival of the English, throw in like surrender and grant, throw in inter-family fights. So Brehon law is a very complicated subject, and people have a very idealistic picture of it.
Yeah. Come across that a few times. All right. Yeah, the term bastard feudalism. I've seen a few academics use that term as well, being applied when it comes down to the High Middle Ages. And it's something I kind of sort of agree with. And the reason why I've kind of thrown around the word bastard feudalism is the way that when the Cogan, Fitzstephen, and de Clare, and also de Lacy, when they come in there, they're trying to enforce their kind of English system. And I know people will turn around and says, well, feudalism didn't really fully work in England and at France at the time as well. And yeah, I fully agree with that as well. But at the same time, what I'm trying to say is the fact that you have those characters trying to enforce their kind of, you are a peasant, you stay on the land and you do A, B, and C. And then it kind of just turns into this weird freakish monster. So I do kind of chuck around the term as well, bastard feudalism.
You could argue that feudalism, whatever form it was, died in England on the Battle of Bosworth, because it's a convenient marking point. From then on, you have a state, and you have a state that is something more than a household of the monarch.
Yeah,
you have similar things in Portugal, similar things in the various Spanish kingdoms, because like you had Castile, you had, doing a blank here, Catalonia, Andalusia, I'm not sure. You had various, like the Habsburg Spanish, the Low Countries, etc. From the early 16th century until almost the end of the 17th century, you have the emergence of European states. It involves a lot of conflict, because you have conflicts between this new state and local lords who are used to having their own war bands. Local lords have to be converted, have to be forced quite often by violence to accepting that the king, the monarch, or the queen in the English case, is their commander, and they have to that they are subject to the monarch, and that they are raising military forces not for themselves but for the monarch. Like in France in the 1640s, you have the Fronde, which is a big fight that way. At the end of the century, you have the emergence of Louis, was it 16, the Sun King. And this massive big, what does he say? My French is terrible. The state is me.
L'état, c'est moi.
L'état, c'est moi. Okay. my wife is fluent in French.
My wife corrects me all the time as well, especially when I'm on my Patreon classes. But what was it called? Caveman. But the problem I have with that comment, caveman, is, and we were talking about the 15th century, is the fact that Brehon law, as O'Neill has pointed out there, is the fact that it is changing. And the application of, and even that depends on what your interpretation of what feudalism is, because as I chucked out left, right, and center, I've always used the term bastard feudalism. And it depends what your interpretation of what feudalism is in the 15th century. I do believe that there is some form of application, as Robert Grisha pointed out there is some form of appliance of that kind of feudalism within influences of feudalism going into O'Connor and O'Neill territories during the High Middle Ages, during the Norman invasion of Ireland, and then going into Brian O'Neill's revolt and the Tomad Wars. There is a level of that influences going in, but I'd still highlight the fact that it is it's not like, and I know people who say, well, it's not perfect in England as well, but it's definitely not perfect in Ireland. And I definitely would use the term bastard feudalism and the influences of bastard feudalism going into O'Neill and O'Connor territories, during the High Middle Ages.
from 1603, and especially after the flight of the Earls, you have English law everywhere. There's no Brehon law, there's no Gaelic law after the flight of the Earls.
Oh yeah, fully agree with that one.
They bring in these court cases, and there's a very interesting book, Legal Imperialism, by that's not the title, but it's by a guy called Hans Polish. The subtitle is Legal Imperialism. It's a good book.
Yeah.
It's the Brehon law system was under severe threat in the second half of the 16th century. English justice was expanding quite strongly. There were fights. Some lords, like O'Neill, were saying, "Okay, I'll allow the English law in, but I want to appoint the sheriff." Were officials. These officials were very important because they would decide who gets prosecuted, etc. Whereas, and the problem I have with many people who talk about Brehon law is Brehon law was dependent on the lord. The Gaelic lords had a lot of power over who gets prosecuted. Like, because they're not going to. O'Neill attacks O'Donnell. He's not going to get himself prosecuted. So, but I think we can return to that another day. We better move on with the Tudors.
We'll see about talking about next week. Somewhat, anyway. As you said, they're a very difficult topic to cover. But reform of the church, that's the next bit. We've got the boys rocking up the reform of the church in Ireland. What's your views and takes on the reform of the church and its arrival? I know Henry VIII just rocks up and starts smashing churches. As a tour guide, you're always kind of highlighted to make sure to tell everybody that this is the point where you start to see sectarian violence in Ireland and stuff. What's your take on that?
Well, I find it very interesting that the only medieval cathedrals in Ireland that aren't destroyed, as far as I know, are the two in Dublin. I think every other one was either destroyed or rebuilt. I'm 90% sure of that. The Catholic Church in Ireland before the Reformation was divided between the Gaelic Catholic Church and the English Catholic Church.
Okay. And when you say English Catholic Church, is that for, okay, we'll take Desmond Fitzgerald because I love him so much. Would the Desmond Fitzgerald be in with the English Catholic Church or the Irish Catholic Church, or was that kind of a blur?
Well, okay, so the Archbishop of Armagh, the Primate of Ireland, he tended to be an Englishman or appointed by the Lord, someone in the English government in Ireland, sort of. With the Fitzgeralds and the Ormonds, they would tend to be on the English side, but they could go to both sides. There was a great flexibility and there was a blurring. But in the once the Counter-Reformation starts, the Gaelic Irish were always very close to the Franciscans.
Okay.
Not to the Jesuits. The Elizabethans are terrified of the Jesuits. The Jesuits are bogeymen to the Elizabethans.
Nice.
But the Gaelic Irish are always very close with Franciscans. So if you're looking at a ruined church in Ireland or an abbey and it's Franciscan, it's a very good chance it was paid for by a Gaelic lord or Augustinian to a lesser extent. If the Jesuits were much closer to the Old English. The Reformation in Ireland the Protestant Reformation was a failure.
Yeah. It definitely was.
Yeah, it was a complete failure for various reasons, including the Irish church was poor. And they didn't get good quality people coming over. A lot of the people who were appointed were government appointees, and they were making money and they were staying in Dublin. They weren't going out to the wilds of Wicklow or the wilds of Kildare.
For sure. After the reform of the church, when you have Lutheran who comes into, because the reform of the church had started with Henry VIII in England, and it didn't seem to be too, well, no, I take that back. It was very, very violent in New York. I was about to say it didn't seem too violent in London, but it definitely was. I think, what's that?
it wasn't Lutheran. It was Anglican.
Oh,
And
you're right. Yeah.
to a large extent, at least at first, it was essentially cross off the name of the Pope and write in Henry VIII.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because I remember, what was it
change a
called?
few minor things, but that's still why in the English church, in the Church of England, you have high Anglican and low Anglican.
Yeah.
Lutheranism never took hold in England. However, Edward the son of Henry VIII, is it the fourth or the sixth? Edward, the young guy, who only lasted 3 years.
Prince Edward, yeah.
No, he was king. He was heavily influenced by Calvinists. You have like in Scotland, you have John Knox, you have various other ones, and the English church starts swinging towards Calvinism. Under Elizabeth in England, you have fights. It kind of sways to and fro. Her problem with Calvinism was, first of all, the Calvinists, especially John Knox, because they wrote loads against Mary of Scotland, they wrote loads of anti-women tracts. Like John Knox is famous for writing this leaflet, Monstrous Regime of Women, which was directed against Mary Queen of Scots, but Elizabeth was the Queen of England at the time. She's kind of going, hold on a second, what the hell is this? But a large amount of her advisors would become Calvinists. And Calvinism had this thing whereby the crazy Gaelic Irish didn't want to be reformed by the book. They weren't accepting peaceful. So let's kill them all. We'll reform them with the sword. We'll kill them, which triggers more rebellions, etc. And it also when the English, because the Reformation at first, most people in Ireland kind of said, whatever, that's just Henry. And when the churches start being closed down, they just ignore it and keep the churches open. Like where I live, the monastery in Ballinaskelligs, that only closed down at the end of the 16th century. It was there for 50 or 60 years after it officially been closed. But when the church starts going more Calvinistic, and then the Catholic Church launches the Catholic Reformation, people in Ireland, I think the first one will be Fitzmaurice, the cousin of Fitzgerald of Desmond, they pick up on the idea and say, hold on a second, we can use religion and nationality as a way of getting support against England.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. We'll take on any questions as well as we're talking through the stuff. Basically, we're covering the Tudor conquest of Ireland, but we're just kind of speed running it as quick as we can. Michal kind of fell in and out there, dragging back in. As we're speed running through that, guys.
Wasn't dragged off to the Tower of London.
That's it. They're under me.
But what was it called? As we're speed running through it, lads, don't hesitate at all to ask any questions there. Any topic whatsoever from the start of the Tudor conquest in Ireland. We literally just quickly ran through the very start of it, the Wars of the Roses in Ireland. Quickly ran through the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, then into the Tudors jumping back in there, the Silken Thomas Rebellion. We've literally just basically gone through the surface of the reform of the church in Ireland, how Henry VIII went off then and crowned himself King of Ireland around, 1541. And then as we go into 1541 into the 1550s, we have the old surrender and regrant in Ireland, where the Gaelic lords submit to the crown. They receive English titles and lands under the English law, and they have to abandon Gaelic customs and start using English law and accept royal supreme control.
Theoretically.
Oh, yeah. Expand on that one, please, Dr. Owen O'Neill.
When Henry II came to Ireland, Rory O'Connor bows before him. Yeah, I'll be a good boy. I'll be your subject. Was he? No.
True.
So surrendering the grant is a great idea of the Tudors in principle. Oh, we'll convert all these Irish lords into English lords. So they gave them titles. With the exception of the O'Briens, the Earls of Thomond, and then some of the Inchquins, etc. They didn't anglicize. The anglicization, in part because the Tudors they weren't consistent about this. Like Donald McCarthy Moore, he became the first and only at that stage Earl of Clancair. And changed one bit. He just used his position in a way to help him do some dodgy financial deeds with Valentine Brown. Con Bacach O'Neill, he was still an O'Neill lord, and he just used his position, and then that caused a civil war, an O'Neill civil war, because Con Bacach, for reasons that seem a bit obscure, chose his son Ferdacha or Matthew as heir, whereas Shane said, no, that should be me. And basically killed, I think he killed Matthew. There's a civil war and Con Bacach is basically overthrown. And then Shane O'Neill wants to become Earl of Tyrone, but he never does. And I don't want to go into the Shane O'Neill rebellion yet. So it was an idea. Gaelic lords loved the idea of getting English titles. And they loved getting a piece of paper that said they owned the land. Because this gave them ownership. Previously, one of the big differences between Gaelic law and English law was Gaelic law you kind of had to be on the land and using it to own it. Like English law, Henry II gave my great grandaunt of Cork County in 1200.
Oh,
so
really?
he did. I forgot to tell you that.
Yeah.
So in 1550, I rock up in the court. I say, "Hey everyone, I actually owned all these lands." And I can slip a fiver or a tenner to the local judge, and you say, yes, you do. The Irish don't like that, and it makes land ownership very dodgy in Ireland for a long time, until the 18th century. It's a serious cause of problem. Whereas if you're made Earl of Tyrone, on the charter, it actually will say that you own all of this. And the Irish lords, they're a bit more clever than the English imagined, because they would write say O'Neill, I'm pretty sure in his charter he got put down that he held all of Derry, he held Fermanagh, etc., whereas he didn't. And it took the English a few decades to realize what was going on, and they tried to start in later regrants. They tried to give some of the lords lower down the chain some land as well, to create a whole pile of landowners.
Yeah. For anyone who's lost there, I do apologize for that. We're just kind of skimming through as much as possible. So if you're lost in the conversation, definitely ask your questions below. We do that. I think that's one of the problems when you start going through things very, very quickly. It's easy to lose people, all right. But if you are lost and there's any questions that you have, if you can come up with anything, definitely comment below. I know we're going very, very fast, so it's even quite difficult to try to jump back on again. I'll just quickly go through some of these questions there, because there were some.
Well, I just want to, before you,
interesting ones, all right. Were these Calvinists affecting Scotland as well as Ireland, given they also would be a part of the Gaelic world, or did their time not come until King James? I'm assuming that's King James of Scotland coming in there.
Yeah, the Church of Scotland was Calvinistic. Basically, there was a Calvinistic revolution in Scotland in I think 1550s or 1560s. It was a long period. It was a long period of turbulence. That was with
Mm,
Mary getting thrown in jail and then fleeing into England. Uh,
mm,
and then from then on, the Church of Scotland is Calvinist.
mm,
Not everybody in Scotland is Calvinists, and especially in the Highlands. I think I know in 1745, some of the
mm,
Highland clans were Catholics, some were Anglicans.
mm.
Whereas I think the majority of lowland Scotland would have been Calvinist, and the Church of Scotland to this day is Calvinistic or is Calvinist. They don't have bishops, and
Mm,
the bishops caused the war in 1638
mm.
because Charles II wanted to put bishops back.
Ah. Just backing into this one here off Caveman. Were there guns in heavy use in the military at this period? I'm assuming you're talking about because the thing is that the Tudor conquest of Ireland goes on for ages from 1534. Sorry, yeah, 1534 all the way up to 1603. And the thing is, you see so much development happening, not just in Ireland at the time, but also in mainland Europe. But I would definitely agree that Ireland is, and then maybe Dr. O'Neill will trip me on this one, but I do think Ireland is keeping up to the standards that's happening in mainland Europe at the time. Obviously, not up to the standard of the French military force and the Holy Roman Empire with the Italian Wars. The Italian Wars definitely is the peak of it. And I wouldn't say at this point, Desmond's Fitzgerald's military force or Kildare Fitzgerald's military force is up to the standard of the Holy Roman Empire and what was it, the French? Sorry?
Because from what I know, this like in the siege of Maynooth, the English cheated. They
Yeah, go
brought
on.
I think the siege of Maynooth was the first use of a siege train and heavy cannon.
Yeah.
And so Maynooth got blown to hell and fell fairly quickly.
Mm,
The use of like muskets was slower. In part, that was because the English were really attached to I was going to say crossbow, to their longbow.
mm,
They kind of said, oh, with Shakespeare writing all these plays about Henry V and St. Swithin's Day and Agincourt, they were really, really convinced that the longbow was a special weapon, and they were slow to pick it up. But in the 1580s, in the Desmond Wars, you would have had mixes on both sides. Both sides would have been mixed. 1590s, I think the Battle of Clontibret is the last appearance. There's a reference to Scottish archers. After that, it's all muskets. Even forces of the Berks, etc., fighting in Mayo are using caliver muskets, which are light muskets. They're useful for the Irish style of warfare. The problem is their effective range is 50 meters, which is not very far.
Yeah.
There is a difference in cavalry. The Gaelic cavalry was kind of light cavalry. The English cavalry, some would probably have had guns, but they were mainly, even the heavy one was what they called border horse. People like that were kind of used to the fighting between Scotland and England. Like in the French Wars of Religion, you had these really heavy guys covered in a new type of armor. They would ride up to the enemy line, to the pike line with pistols, take out their pistols, fire, and ride back. So it's called a caracole, which is I think the French word for snail. I think if you look from above, it looked like a snail. It wasn't particularly effective, but it worked. That doesn't seem to have existed in Ireland because Ireland, there weren't large cavalry forces, and most land was not well suited to this. Because if you go out looking for good, flat, non-boggy land in Ireland, apart from the Curragh of Kinsale and the Golden Vale, where else are you going to find? So yeah, there were a lot of guns.
Yeah. Because my understanding so far of the development of guns in Ireland is that the development was coming in more from Scotland and the Iberian Peninsula. But from my understanding of reading Jim O'Neill's work in the 9 Years' War, you don't have that sudden, catching up to the standards of mainland Europe in Ireland with the Gaelic forces until the 9 Years' War. And then once Hugh O'Neill takes over the 9 Years' War, then we're up to the standard of mainland Europe, is my understanding. But we don't...
O'Neill also secured a good supply of powder for quite a while. The Spanish gave him a lot of powder and a lot of caliber muskets. He bought a lot in Scotland, and he also built up some. He tried to make gunpowder.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ricky.
I don't think he was particularly successful, because at the end of the war, he's very short of powder.
Yeah.
Someone asked a question, I think it was Dennis, about a Fitzgerald lady being raised with Elizabeth I. There were several Fitzgeralds brought over, like I think it was the son of the last Earl Desmond. He gets brought up in London as a Protestant, and then in 1600 he's sent over to Munster because they think he'll convince them to follow him and be English. And a lot of people are interested in him, but then he goes to Protestant mass and they all say, feck off. And then he's sent back to England where he dies. So there were a lot of Irish being brought over. The Earl of Thomond was the most successful because he was brought up in London and he became Protestant, and his lineage stayed Protestant.
What was it called? Expand on the Lancastrian house. Could you please? I don't think we're going to go too much into details about the Lancastrian house today, just because we want to focus on. I know we slightly touched on them with the Wars of the Roses in Ireland, but I mostly want to focus on House Tudor today. I don't want to sound rude or anything. It's just it's kind of House Lancaster kind of gets bounced out of it during the Wars of the Roses.
You have the Tudor. From once Henry VII is crowned, you have the House of Tudor. Lancaster is no longer really used.
Yeah.
But, there's an interesting question from Batteries. How were mercenaries paid? How were mercenaries paid? Was it land primarily? What if they didn't want land? It would have been a mixture of things. There's actually a proclamation of Hugh O'Neill's whereby he says, like, he gives a rate of pay per day in money. He probably didn't give them coin. He would have given them the equivalent. They would have all been entitled to receive food and stuff. Some might have got money. If you were one of the MacSheehy Gallo glasses of the Earl of Desmond, you probably got paid in some coin. Like, especially, I presume once a year you got given some money. Land, you wouldn't. Some of the very, very top ones would have got land. Like for a minor lord, getting involved in wars in Ireland was a very good route of social ascension. You could climb socially. Like there is Dermot O'Connor was a nobody, a very minor O'Connor noble from Connacht, and Hugh O'Neill sends him into Munster in 1598. He ends up marrying the daughter of the last Earl of Desmond, and he's doing very well. But then he gets involved in some shenanigans with the English, and he goes back. But he rose quite well. Another example is Tyrrell, Captain Tyrrell, who was he was a marcher lord, becomes one of O'Neill's best commanders, survives the war, keeps his land, and lives in Ireland until I think 1640 he died.
Yeah, that's something that you see all through Tudor England as well. Just the whole shifting of minor lords and merchant classes rising to nobility and higher echelons of nobility. So it's a complete change. It's a bit of a. I think there was a quip made in the English Parliament, or British Parliament at this time, more towards the Spencers, saying, and a lord from a family that was, maybe 100 years old or whatever, sort of made a quip towards the Spencers, who actually were involved in sheep farming or something before that. And then during the Tudor period, had sort of been raised to you have Princess Diana, who famously becomes, the mother of the ruling monarch of England. Basically, it sort of tried to make a joke at his expense about how he's modern compared to them in nobility. And it just comes from that period, obviously, where Henry VIII completely changes the whole system effectively.
Anyway, I'll just make a slight comment there to Ned Kelly. Ned Kelly, would you go off there and fight with Wayne, will you? Wayne's the man you should be talking about when it comes down to Australia. I say Austrian there, but what was it called? Australia. My tongue is tripping over like this. Not tomorrow. Australian Irish history. Wayne is the man to be talking about there. So go have a little argument with himself there over on Facebook. He's over on Facebook on Clans and Dynasties most of the time. So and that's the same with the other Australian Irish. Head on over to Clans and Dynasties on Facebook. That's mostly where the Australian Irish hang out when it comes down to medieval history for sure. And that's Mihal's channel as well. And definitely subscribe over to Mihal's channel on YouTube as well. Although you don't have to, when you're live streaming, do you have many Australian Irish, Mihal?
To be fair, it depends on the stream. Depends on some of them are mad all over. I don't have time to really ask where everyone's from, but there's a couple. Like I say, Wayne would be very good for rounding them all up.
Yeah. Like a sheep herder. But I will pop back over to the main topic at hand again with the first plantation. So of course Henry VIII goes off and dies on us. Poor man. He was so fit and healthy. I don't know what happened, to be honest with you, but he passes away at a very young age, and he ends up having no. He has a success, as you said earlier, he male heir for a short period of time. He dies off, then he takes over for a very short time as well before he ends up getting the old chop by Bloody Mary, as she's called.
I don't think she's counted as an official.
Oh, don't even have to talk about her, so that's grand.
Yeah, because she's only 7 days or something. It's like it's an attempted coup. It's an attempted coup.
Yeah.
But then you have Mary.
Oh, yeah. Bloody Mary herself. But tell me this. What happens? Because we have allegedly from 1556 to 1560, she allegedly is one of the first people seeing the first plantation into Ireland after deposing the O'Moores and the O'Connors. What the hell happens there? I thought she was one of us. I thought she was a good Catholic woman. What happens that she's deposing the likes of the O'Connors and the O'Moores?
Ireland, the Catholics in Ireland were bitterly divided between, like, the Old English did not want to be Gaelic. They were Catholic, but they saw themselves as English and therefore civilized. They believed that the Gaelic Irish were in need of reforming, of being civilized, of being cultured under their leadership. And they fought with them constantly. And I don't know the full details of this plantation. It was the first plantation by a Catholic monarch. But you will find, like, Northern England was heavily Catholic until the end of the Tudors. You'll find a lot of, and the first people had this idea, New English Protestant, Old English Catholic. It's not true. Many of the first New English settlers who come in, and the most successful settlers, are not in plantations. There are people like the Bagnalls. There's people like the Moores. The Lord Moore ends up with Mellifont, and then a descendant of his. There's a picture that's always appearing on Facebook of a ruined mansion with trees growing in it. That's a Moor. It's in Connacht. When the French arrived in 1798, they made one of the Moors president of Connacht. And I think there's an Earl of Drogheda or something at the moment who is distantly related to them. The Moors were very good friends with Hugh O'Neill. They were Catholic. They were New English and they were Catholic. Hugh O'Neill's secretary was Hovenden, who was a New English Catholic family. And I've forgotten what I started out. Oh, the plantations. Yeah. So, and then many of the English officers, like Samuel Bagnall, he was a cousin of Henry Bagnall. He was Catholic. There were lots of Catholic officers serving in the Irish Army because it was easier to be a Catholic in Ireland than in England. But being Catholic doesn't mean that they supported the Catholic Rebellion, that they supported the Gaelic Confederacy, the Catholic Confederacy.
I just want to, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to, when Philip's sort of unsure as to why, the O'Moores and the O'Connors are just based there, they actually rebel. So that's why they actually deserved it.
What? Get out of it.
Yeah, I mean, from the English point of view, the O'Moores, they've rebelled in 1556. So then this causes the implementation of Mary I plantation of Laois and Offaly. Primarily the O'Moores and the O'Connors are sort of pushed back, and then the Fort Protector in Portlaoise and Fort Governor, and where I can't remember, are built.
It's on Dangan in Offaly.
They're built to guard the settlers, and then obviously what comes with the plantation is the grants are given primarily to army officers and Old English, on the conditions that they meet certain conditions like build stone houses, cultivate the land in an English manner, arm themselves and employ only English servants, because we've got to remember at the time as well that primarily Ireland is like a financial drain on the exchequer. So the Crown's kind of hoping as well that easing off the rebellion, but they'll cost they'll ease the cost of running the country by confiscating land from these rebels and granting it to settlers. But like say, that one was largely a failure because the settlers are constantly terrorized by the O'Moores and the O'Connors. And they fail to attract enough settlers to come across, so they have to employ local Irish labour, and straight away they're violating the terms of the plantation. So ultimately, the cost of like military protection for the settlers then exceeds the sort of money that you're getting in from the revenue.
Yeah, for sure. This one might be just way out there because it's just a sort of random topic.
I was just going to add on about plantations. There was no real successful plantation, with the partial exception of the Munster plantation, until the Ulster plantation. But the idea of plantation is robbed from the Greeks and Romans.
Okay.
Because the Elizabethan elite, they were really fascinated with Roman history. They saw themselves as new Romans. And the whole idea of the Renaissance, it was this copying Rome. And so what did the Greeks do? What did the Romans do when they moved into a new area? They set up plantations, new cities. Marseille was a colony it was a Greek colony originally. So they had this idea, you have this nice organized little town, you get these English people, plonk them in the middle of all these savage Irish, and it's going to become a New England. It didn't work, but they didn't recognize that.
What this is about out there for yourself, Michal, there. I'm just wondering, and then we'll just go back into the comment section again before we go into the first Desmond Rebellion. Do you know what branch of the O'Connors it was that were getting booted off the land, or is that just way out there question?
What, in Offaly?
Yeah, the one of
Yeah,
first presentation.
they're the O'Connor Feelies, so they're not
Mm.
related to the O'Connors of Connacht, the more
Okay.
famous line. The O'Connor Feelies are more closely, when I say closely, I mean they come from the same early medieval tribal group as the likes of the O'Byrnes. So they are related to a lot of Leinster families, and more commonly. So yeah, they're a totally different branch. They're from the Feely tribal group. So they're not related to the probably more famous O'Connors in Connacht.
Yeah. Fair enough. I just want to go back into the comment section again and cover some of the what was it called? Newer comments that's popped up for sure. And if you have any comments, definitely pump it into the comment section below, and I'll cover it just before we cover the first Desmond Rebellion. And if you're lost, make sure to tell me there so I can try to pull you back into the conversation again. Because I do have to highlight, geez, we are running. I thought we're well ahead of what I thought we originally would be at this point. We've gone well sprinting ahead. When it comes on to this topic. Owen O'Neill made a promise at the start. We're finishing this and we're going to get this done. And looks like we're going well ahead right now. But yeah, Caveman has a great question for just going into the first Desmond Rebellion. So I'll apply this just going into the first Desmond Rebellion. Who are your favorite Gaelic lords at this time? So I'm saying just before the first Desmond Rebellion. And does the Anglo-Irish count in there? Because if we can count the Anglo-Irish, I'd put the Desmond Fitzgeralds in there. That would be definitely my favorite. But I'm from Mallow, so I'm biased when it comes down to that one. And if I couldn't pick the Fitzgeralds, I'd go with the O'Briens, to be honest with you. Although Dr. Owen O'Neill would probably give me dirty looks from beginning to end. Tell me this, Owen. What's your favorite Gaelic lord going into the first Desmond Rebellion?
I find Hugh O'Neill interesting because at this stage he was starting to go up. He was and still more or less a nobody at this stage because his father was dead, his grandfather was dead. He'd been driven out of Tyrone, and he's just a very minor lord. And then he starts a very interesting rise to power. Some of the O'Donnells are quite interesting. As are the O'Byrnes. They're like the O'Byrnes who are in Wicklow, like they have some things favoring them because the English find it hard to get there, but they're like you can drive from Dublin now to where Fiach MacHugh's main place was in about an hour. Okay, that's in a car. So it's not that far from Dublin. And he burned the bawn around St. Patrick's Cathedral. He attacked the bawn around St. Patrick's Cathedral a couple of times. So he was very interesting. He was also, he wasn't just a savage as such. He was aware of what was going on. There's another Kavanagh called, what's his name? Kavanagh Spawning. He was given the name Spanish, nickname Spanish, because he was so well mixed in with them. He's not that well known, but he survives he survives the downfall, and then I'm not sure what happens to his family.
I might think I agree with you. The O'Byrnes are probably my favorite.
Really?
Because obviously Ulster doesn't play that much of in comparison. So in the Desmond Rebellions, the likes of Fiachra O'Byrne is definitely an interesting character in that during that conflict. So I would say during that conflict the O'Byrnes are probably the Gaelic family I'm most interested in.
This one's slightly off topic, so I'll quickly just knock this. I'll answer it and then put it to the side. I won't elaborate too much on it. Hope you don't mind, Davy Jones. What would be an example of a battle where Gallowglass and Norman Knights fight just stand out as very interesting? That would be very, very early on with Battle of Tralee. what was it called? Dr. Owen O'Neill has a very good. You've got a video, Owen O'Neill, on the Battle of Tralee, don't you, on your page?
So I've a video on the Battle of Callan, 1261, but
Yeah.
I don't think there were Gallaglass fighting down then. And I have a video on Tralee in the Second Desmond Rebellion. No, I'm not sure which battle that you're referring to, Battle of Tralee.
I think I'm talking about more on the 13th century. I think there's a Battle of Tralee back then. I'm probably wrong. If it's not the Battle of Tralee, you can always go and look up the Battle of Down between Brian O'Neill and the Hiberno-Norman forces back then. The problem with the Norman Knight, so if you're thinking about, like, I know the problem is with Irish history is they chuck the word Norman left, right, and center. From a European context, you can't use the word Norman after 1220 because you'll confuse Europeans, because you're literally constructing sentences where the Normans of Ireland, are going to France to fight the Normans of Normandy. So those sentences don't make sense after 1220. Plus, the equipment and kit changes around 1210, 1220. Into more high Middle Ages weaponry and armor and stuff, and it's referred to from a military perspective as English armor, rather than 13th century English armor rather than Norman armor, which had been around 1169. So around 1169, you can easily use the word Normans and stuff. So those earlier battles that happen in Ireland with the initial wave that comes in, no problems saying the word Norman. The problem is the Galloglass that we know of isn't around at that point. So the word Norman does become very difficult to use. They do use the word Hiberno-Norman to simplify the conversation, going up to Brian O'Neill's revolt and the Tamad Wars that happened around 1260. But it's a funny one to use, especially the way you're using it in the sentence of Galloglass and Norman Knight fought. It's just the way when you say Norman Knight, are you talking about a knight from around 1169 fighting someone from 1260? Do you understand what I'm saying? It's just a funny sentence to use. But I would definitely say, because I understand what you're saying. If you're saying what I think you're saying, you might be thinking about Brian O'Neill's revolt and the Tamad Wars, and that would be the Battle of Down around, I think it's around 1262, if I'm not mistaken. So try looking into that one for sure. I'll just quickly hammer these ones so we can get back into the
I will just say,
go on,
just really quickly, I do have a video on the Battle of Ballyshannon in 1247, which is the first instance of proto-Galloglass sort of appearing in Ireland. So that would probably be that's 27 years after Philip's timeline there, so it's probably the closest. So if you want to go out and check that out, but that's about that. That's about the height of it.
This one's a quite good one here. The Plantation of Ulster was a master one.
No.
We might go into more detail. What's up?
Let's not talk about it.
We'll cover later. So too soon. We'll cover that one later. I think I've seen a better one though. Yeah, a lot of these ones, like this one here, we'll cover that actually later. Then it seems to be better. We can get into more details and stuff in a bit. So we'll return back to some of these questions.
There's one question here from Batteries. How did Irish trade with the English? Did they use Tudor coins or precious metal ingots? They some, as you said, would have been barter. Some would have. They did use Tudor coins. There were Irish coins. The Irish coin was worth. The Irish pound was worth less than the English one. And then in 1600 they did a big devaluation, which they managed. They made such a mess of it. They lost money on it. And also, there would have been a fair amount of Spanish coin because the Spanish sent over treasure at times. They would send over a few thousand coins to O'Neill or to other people. And then with trade, there would have been other money coming in. The old English, like the merchants in Galway, in Limerick, Cork, Youghal, would have traded extensively with with Spain, Portugal, and France. Dingle, for example, had a huge wine trade.
Mm.
They imported loads of wine in Dingle. And the one of the Habsburg princes came to Kinsale in 1514 or something, or
Mm.
1512.
Yeah.
So the Ireland, it was a poor economy,
Mm.
but it was an economy, and it was under the English kingdom, but it was trading with Spain, with France, with Portugal. So there was a lot of coins going around. And in those days, if someone gives you a coin, you don't respect borders. Coins moved across borders quite a
Mm.
lot.
Fair enough. I just want to batteries. I just want to apologize to you there. Your comment didn't pop up in my comment section, so if your comment's not popping up, I just want to apologize to anyone else I haven't answered. Maybe it's just not going through the chat and stuff. This happens a few times, all right, and sometimes then YouTube deletes it, or what was it
Or
called?
there's too many,
The
or too
restream.
many come in, or we're
Yeah.
talking something, and it's easy to miss them.
Yeah, that's that as well. So I just want to
Yeah.
apologize. Anyone I missed there, I just want to apologize to that one. I'm assuming what's happening is that it's on a perfect line and then I'm slowly but sure ticking it. I have skipped a few of them. Okay, I do. For anyone that's gone running ahead up to the Scottish plantation, I have actually purposely skipped yours on purpose, by the way. So I'm not apologizing for that one, but we will get back to them. So just be patient with those ones. I do want to answer this one here. And the reason why I want to answer it is because a random question: who was the last standing king of Ireland before the English came in? The thing is, the only problem I have with that one, and this is why myself and Caveman kind of bounce off when it comes down to interpretation of this one and the interpretation of what is feudalism in Ireland, and why I use the term bastard feudalism, is that Ireland, and I have to really hammer this one down, and I hope Caveman agrees with me with this one and the rest of you guys, is that Ireland is not centralized ever. I don't think there's ever, like, Ireland, it does not function like England. And I know this really annoys Churchill coming out of the Irish Civil War when he turns around in frustration and says, why can't Ireland be England? The thing is, Ireland was never, it cannot function under English style of ruling, which is centralization. It doesn't function like that. It functions in king groups, which is Ireland connected through marriage alliances, fosterage, and taking hostages. And that's how Ireland is linked together in the early medieval period. And then on top of that, you have a high king, a man with the biggest stick, who's running Ireland to a certain degree, okay? And then each one of those king groups that are connected through marriage alliances, fosterage, and hostages, all of them connected have a semi-independence within their own Tudor, okay? Which are ring forts, okay? You can literally discuss this in previous videos, and also we can discuss this in the future as well, as why Ireland doesn't function under centralization. The Normans tried to bring in centralization into their little areas that they take over, but it just doesn't function and work. And you can see that as well going into the Elizabethan era as well. So when you say king is the idea of a centralized system, which never functions. Even when the Gaelic tried to bring in some form of centralization, perhaps with King Brian O'Neill, it still just doesn't click. There is no, it's just not the system in Ireland. Ireland, if you strip it back down to the basics of early medieval Ireland, it's king groups. Ireland is connected together, and at the top you have the man with the biggest stick, a high king, but he's not a centralized high king that you would see in France or in England. And then once you get into the high Middle Ages, you get a whole load of growing pains. Then you go into the late medieval period where you have, like, what kind of system would you refer to when it comes, especially going into the First Desmond Rebellion, Dr. Owen O'Neill?
Well, you had the system that you had in 90% of Europe. You had a monarch, and the monarch, in this case Queen Elizabeth, was trying to extend her power and trying to reduce local powers, whether of towns or whether of local powers.
Mm.
And you also had a clash between two rival earls,
Mm.
both of whom were English, Anglo-Norman descent, Ormond and Desmond.
Mm.
It so happened that Ormond was Protestant, though
Yeah.
most of his near family weren't, and they rebelled a couple of times. In the
Mm.
9 Years' War, Ormond hung one of his nephews for supporting O'Neill.
Mm.
Um, so you have this friction
Mm.
between Butler and Ormond, the same as you had between, say, House of York and House of Lancaster.
Mm.
And um, there is a battle, I think it's a battle of Affrane,
Mm.
um, which I know some English historians point at some sort of oddity,
Yeah.
but it's just similar to zillions of battles in England previously.
Mm.
Um, and then because Ormond is a cousin, a distant cousin, he's the Boleyns come from his family, and Anne Boleyn,
Mm.
before was the mother of Elizabeth before getting her head chopped
Mm.
off. So, um, favorable to Ormond, and
Mm.
she punishes Desmond after the battle. Desmond lost the
Mm.
battle and is wounded, I think quite badly, and he's carried off in a shield or something like that. And then he ends up in Dublin. Yeah, I think he actually goes to prison. Did he go to London? So he's punished,
Mm.
and eventually he's let out. He's supposed to stay up in Dublin, and he's very annoyed and says, "Feck that," and he leaves London. He leaves Dublin, heads back to Cork, and
Mm.
rebels. But he was doing what many lords had done and would continue to do. So that it was like a minor rebellion, sort of, and he know there'd be a couple of battles, and then eventually everyone would say sorry, and things would get made up again.
Mm.
At first that happened, but then things changed dramatically.
Mm.
Do you want
Aye.
me to should we roll into all the Desmonds together to get rid of them?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
just
Might as well roll through the whole Desmond Rebellion and start running because they're 10 minutes past through anyway, and then we can go into Connacht after the first. Well, we can just because you want to cover Shane O'Neill as well. So yeah, we can
yeah,
fly through the Desmond Rebellion now. Just run
yeah.
through, and then later
Well,
on we can specialize.
so Desmond was always like if you think of the three earldoms, the three English earldoms
Mm.
in Ireland, the three ones that were existing under Elizabeth,
Mm.
Fitzgerald, um, the Kildare, Desmond, and Ormond. Desmond was always the wild one because I
Mm.
know that a couple of earls of Desmond got executed, and they were always in the way, the ones that were a bit less civilized English than the other two.
Mm.
However, Kildare, the House of Kildare falls, and that leaves two Anglo-Irish, Old English, whatever you want to call them, lordships. And Ormond is well in, Desmond is out. So this fight occurs. So he rebels, and his he is extremely powerful. He has a lot of land, which runs. I don't think he has Cork City itself, but it runs from up from Cork,
Mm.
huge amount of Limerick, not Limerick City, but like I would say half of Limerick County, if not more, and and what was Kerry then, North Kerry, and that covers some of the best agricultural land in Ireland, the Golden Vale.
Mm.
Um, and he has a lot of big castles, Castle Island, Askeaton, uh, the place where the traffic is always terrible, Adair, and a fair few others. And like if you go to Kinsale, there's a Desmond Castle in Kinsale. Newcastle West has a Desmond Castle. These are smaller ones. I think Youghal might have a Desmond Castle, and some of the other towns in Cork have Desmond Castles. So he was powerful.
Mm.
Um, and then he has good relations with many of the Gaelic lords
Mm.
because they're willing to come in with him. And then there are lots of Geraldines, smaller Geraldines. You have Fitzmaurice, Lord of Kerry, you have the Knight of Kerry, Fitzgibbon, the White Knight, the Knight of Glen, and probably several other ones. So he has a large force. But the first war, the fighting, it doesn't all go his way. He's not a very good commander, to put it bluntly.
Yeah.
So eventually he surrenders, and because the English send a lot of people, he gets sent up to Dublin and told to behave himself. But then things kind of go out of his control. His cousin, Fitzmaurice, decides to use the Catholic card. And then nearer the Pale, like the Lord Baltinglass, who for the first and only time appears in Irish history, because you never hear Baltinglass before or afterwards, revolts, explicitly a Catholic revolt. He allies with Fiach Mac Hugh, and they defeat in Glenmalure the English army. They put quite a serious defeat on them. But then that peters out.
Yeah.
And then Fitzmaurice heads off to the continent looking for aid. And
this goes into the second rebellion then.
Yeah. In the meantime, this is a bizarre thing. A guy called Thomas Stukely, he could have been English, but he was Catholic. He got men from the Pope, and they're sailing back to Ireland, and they stop in Lisbon in 1578. And what was happening in Lisbon in 1578, the mad young king, Sebastian, had decided to restart the Crusades, but in Morocco. So he basically says, "Great, more men." He takes all these guys, and they all sail off for Morocco and are all massacred. They're completely defeated in the Battle of Al-Qaz Kabir, which is somewhere in Morocco. If he had landed, Irish history could have been different. Fitzmaurice eventually comes back, and then you have the landing in basically of Italians, but under a Spaniard in Dingle in Dunanore, or Smerwick Fort. But Fitzmaurice is with them, but he leaves the Spaniards there. They're in this fort, and he goes off to the countryside to raise more men, to raise support. But he gets killed in a stupid skirmish. He has a fight with someone, and they kill him. And then Desmond's brother, John of Desmond, is helping the English army besiege the Spanish-Italian force in Smerwick. But then something that it's a bit obscure. There are two English officials in Tralee, and John of Desmond murders them. Like these guys are sleeping in the same bed, which was something very common back in those days. Someone, my audio has been picked up by my laptop. That's strange. Someone is saying
I think it's going between because it's grand on. You see, the thing is that on our side it's about perfect, but then you listen to it going through YouTube and stuff, and it can act up at times. What we'll do is after we've done this recording and well, I wouldn't say we're live right now, but after we're done, you see, we can't really listen to ourselves too well right now. Is we'll make the adjustments and changes after the live stream and stuff, but because we can't really make those massive changes right now on the fly, especially going through the microphone.
This normally works. Hopefully get better. So then John of Desmond goes into revolt, and he brings his brother in with them. And then again, the Desmonds are not very good. They have some victories, but they're quite incompetent as military leaders. And the English send loads and loads and loads of soldiers. And they start doing not very nice things, just to put it bluntly. Okay, you can hear me fine now.
Yeah,
There's a
just a
lot of
little low.
there's a lot of massacres. There is, and there. It's not the first time there's massacres, but it's kind of the first time you have an almost industrial use of famine. So
Mm,
they're burning large amounts of Cork, parts of Kerry. They get ravaged by the English with the
mm,
idea of starving the Gaelic lords out. And there's a famous scene whereby the English commander he cuts the heads off loads of Gaelic soldiers
yeah.
and he puts them outside his tent and he's bringing the Gaelic lords are coming into him to discuss surrender and they have to pass through his heads.
Mm,
And even Spencer, who had no problem witnessing the massacre because the Spaniards and Italians in Dunanore actually surrender and then they're massacred. Spencer
mm,
had no problem about that, but when he's writing about the famine that's caused in Munster, you
mm,
can say he kind of said, Jesus, this is a bit much.
yeah.
It's brutal.
Mm,
In the end, Desmond is like his brother is killed, and he's left by himself with a few men. Then he's hunted down and killed. I think Moriarty kills them, and I think his
mm,
head was chopped off and sent off to Elizabeth and her ladies.
mm,
Um,
mm.
I think that's very blunt and quick, and I'm sure I missed.
Oh,
If there
a
was
good
any
chunk of it.
if there are any specialists in Desmond rebellions listening, they'll probably kill me for missing
I
important.
I wanted to, because we're on 20 past now and we still need to cover Connacht because we're running. We are literally running through this now. Because I do have questions of my own. But the problem is that once we get into these, because I wanted to go on to Desmond's resistance, because I want to link it back to the earlier question of King of Ireland, because it actually fits in with my question here of resistance to centralization during the Desmond Rebellion. But God, I think that would be a bit too chunky for
Probably
the
be a
time
video of its
being.
own.
Yeah. Mihal, is there anything you want to elaborate on before we continue dashing into the next whole load of wars,
No,
which
no,
is
we're
the
on a sprint, and
yeah.
Owen's doing a great job. So,
um,
Just while you mentioned centralization,
mm,
one thing that like people tend to think, uh, tend to think of, Ireland just the English in Ireland just being reduced to the Pale.
mm,
It wasn't. You had the Pale, but Munster was full of towns, and these
yeah.
towns were all. Some of the people in there would have been Gaelic, but they were run by English. You have Kinsale, you have Youghal, you have Cork, you have Limerick. I think Mallow and Kilmallock are founded in the plantation.
Mm,
You have lots of big market, Kilkenny, and several of the other ports from between Waterford and Cork were towns as well.
yeah.
So you had a very important old English middle class merchants and officials in Munster.
Do you mind answering? Because I don't. I think this is a grand one to ask. Is how was Dundalk and stuff at this period? I think they're grand at this point. I don't think they're attacked or savagely burned or anything at this point. I think it's going into the 9 Years' War again that Dundalk and all those regions are attacked again, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Dundalk is doing well because it's a frontier town. So you have Dundalk, you have the Moray Pass, and then you have Newry.
Yeah.
Hugh O'Neill had a castle supposedly in Dundalk through his grandfather, the Kelly, or his grandmother or something. Apparently, he inherited a castle there. And I'm not sure whether he had one in Newry or not, because Newry was kind of set up by the Bagnalls. They were setting up their own lordship there.
Yeah.
So Dundalk would have had a lot of trade. Probably Dundalk's main. It wasn't that important, but Carlingford down the road from it was quite important. And you can see that by going to Carlingford now.
Yeah. Jumping over to Kevin. Yeah, we'll try our best to try to fix the sound once we're finished the recording and stuff, and I'll have a listen afterwards to see how the sound is. That's mostly how I function. Actually, is I listen to afterwards because. Geez, when I'm suddenly on the fly, I don't know what to bloody do when it comes down to fixing sound and stuff. So we'll have a look at this stuff on Owen's sound later, and we'll see how we can adjust and fix it afterwards. Because it's not until I actually listen back that I can see perfectly how the problem is. Because you see, I'm listening to it straight from the restream over, so it's grand on my headset. You see, but you see, I can't hear myself and Michal, and then Owen's sound as well. So. And it seems to me, looking at the comments, it seems to be just slight alterations and stuff that needs to be fixed. But we'll see what we can do afterwards. Davey, what are you trying to say there? King groups. When I say king groups, I'm talking about what was it? KIN and then groups. But look into Fergus Kelly's Early Irish Law when it comes down to the stripped down basics of how king groups function in Ireland and stuff. But we'll get into centralization in king groups as a different topic next week, probably, or even the week after that. We'll see what we do next week because we have to quickly run through because we have to go with the continued expansion into Connacht and Shane O'Neill's revolt now. Owen, are you okay to keep running, or do you want Michal to take over?
No, if Michal wants to talk about Shayna, it's fine. Otherwise, I can go for it.
Do you want to go talk about Shane O'Neill, Michal, or do you want Owen to continue the sprint?
No, I'm quite happy. This is literally Owen's sort of area of expertise. So
yeah,
if I feel like a point's missed, or because he's, I'll chime in, and or if we get time, talk about like the early plantations of Ulster and how that impacts it all. Then I'll chime in, but if not, we'll just keep going as we're going.
Just popping back into the comment section. I think all those castles around Dundalk, I don't think there's any sieges or attacks during. To be honest with you, I can't even think of it during any of the period of the 9 Years' War. Dundalk being, maybe it is attacked during the 9 Years' War, but I'm unaware of it, especially during the Desmond's Rebellion. I don't know any attacks on Dundalk itself during that period, to be honest with you.
I know there were some complaints that some of the O'Neills were levying black tax from Dundalk, which is basically a blackmail sort of, hey, give us money or burn us down.
Yeah.
But you have to take these complaints with a grain of salt because there was a huge amount of trade going on, and then people would say, "Oh, the O'Neills took all my money away. I can't pay any tax. Poor me," or "Please give me money." So there's exaggerations going on in a lot of the sources.
Fair enough. Okay, so how quick can we do this? 3, 2, 1, go on. When it comes down to the topic of what was it called? The Tudors expanding over to the Connacht region, and then Shane O'Neill going up against the Tudors. First and foremost, is Shane O'Neill? Was he a part of the original surrender and regrant? Like, is he technically speaking should be under the Tudors at this point, and it should be categorized as a rebellion?
His father was Con Bacach O'Neill, who was made the first Earl of Tyrone.
Yeah.
But Con Bacach said, my heir, and this was part of it, they have to stipulate an heir. So the next Earl of Tyrone is going to be Dr. Matthew, as people know by the English name. Shane O'Neill said, hey, that excludes me. And basically starts a civil war, which he wins.
Yeah, nice.
So he becomes he's O'Neill of Dungannon. And then he was quite skilled in some ways. And like I'm fairly sure that he wrote to Mary Queen of Scots and said, hey, marry me. And that never worked out because so first of all he attacks the O'Donnells and beats the O'Donnells. And then he attacks the MacDonalds, who at that stage are moving in to the kind of the northeast. And their main castle would have been Dunluce Castle.
Mm.
So he has suddenly, he's come out of a civil war, which the English weren't too worried about,
Mm.
because as long as the Irish were fighting, the Gaelic Irish were fighting among themselves, no problem. But
Mhm.
suddenly he seems to be very powerful. And so there's
Would it be
various
true to say that he has a force of 8,000 men? Because I've heard that number being chucked around with both Hugh O'Neill and Shane O'Neill at that point.
I don't think he had 8,000 men.
Mm.
Hugh O'Neill didn't. Um, it's he had several thousand because people had funny ways of counting and everything is exaggerated.
Mm.
Um, so there are various negotiations, and he even goes over to London for a while,
Mm.
and he stomps up there, and everybody's playing a role, like he's playing barbarian chief, etc. Sort of, and the English kind of love it. Oh, this guy in fancy clothes stomps up. I know there are some famous recent drawings of his gallowglass in London, etc.
Mm.
But in a way, he's too politically unstable,
Mm.
and the English kingdom in Ireland under Elizabeth is too unstable for the two to combine.
Mm.
He would like, and I think I'm not sure if it was MacDonald or O'Donnell, but I think he stole the wife of one.
Mm.
I think it was the O'Donnell Lord was in jail, and he stole O'Donnell's wife and had a baby with her.
Yeah.
Hugh Cavill, what was his name? Hugh Neal actually killed him later. His name means born in chains or born in fetters.
Oh.
Um, and then, so things are very unstable, and the Elizabethans are very worried, not just by Shane, but by the growth of MacDonald power in Ireland, because you have to remember the MacDonalds were not English, they were not
Mm.
Irish, they were Scottish,
Yeah.
and their king was, well, for at this stage probably it was still Mary,
Mm.
um, and then it would have become James. So they were not happy with the growth of the Scots.
Mm.
Um, so um, like, and Shane, he doesn't. Although he defeats the O'Donnells a couple of times, he doesn't conquer them because he doesn't have a conquering army, and the
Mm.
system is not made up to conquer. So in 1567, he attacks the O'Donnells again and is defeated.
Mm.
I think it's Barrettsmore, which is the one of the main passes. I think you go from Strabane to Lifford, and then if you're heading towards Donegal town, there's that pass. He gets badly defeated, and then so he says to the MacDonalds, "Oh, shall we make an alliance?" And they say, "Fine." So he heads off, and the tradition is having a feast, and then they chop his head off to please Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So he was a bit of a crazy guy, but he was in a very difficult situation. He takes power by a coup. The Elizabethans, Barnesgap, thanks, Battery. The Elizabethans don't really know how to deal with him, and he doesn't really know how to deal with the Elizabethans.
Mm.
And you have the power block of the O'Donnells, the power block of Shane, and the power block of the MacDonalds, and
Mm.
then the English. And they're all out of balance with each other. And in the end, Shane loses.
Mm.
That's a rapid sprint.
Mm. We're getting a ton of comments asking about what was it called? We're getting a load of comments there on the casualty rates when it comes down to the both fighting in Connacht at this point, I suppose, with Grace O'Malley and stuff, and the fighting that was happening in Ulster at the time with Shane O'Neill. What was the casualty rate like at that point?
Um, the final battle of Shane and the O'Donnells, it seems to have been quite high because Shane gets defeated, and I think he's crossed the river a bit, and I think his back's to the river or something like that. So in the end, I think his forces are slaughtered. but that was an exceptional one. With Grace O'Malley in Connacht, not much, because she wasn't rebelling. That was very much local fighting. She wasn't. She was annoyed with Bingham. Bingham and her were fighting. We will come to that, but it wasn't a big rebellion, and she was not a powerful lord. Like, she would have had a couple of hundred men.
I'm trying
But
to
another
find
thing
it.
about conflicts at this stage is a huge amount of people who were injured would die. A large amount of the wounded would die. And marching a group of men around the countryside, several of them will die. The Gaelic soldiers, because they were better adapted to the countryside, they didn't die of various diseases. The English soldiers died in huge numbers out of disease. Whereas, like, Scottish and Irish don't seem to have done that.
Fair enough. What time are we on? 36. Jesus, time is flying by fast. I'm trying to find some decent questions and stuff, so definitely keep your questions flowing in there. I'll end up deleting Michal there and Rory, or what was it called? Ned, the two of you, go on, get out. What was it called? God, the two of you are mad. We'll push over.
I saw Rory Gallagher play in Dublin in 1984, I think it was. Great kid.
Yeah. Great lad for sure. We'll quickly just start flying over to the 9 Years' War. I have what was it called? I seen the map back in the day. I think this map now is about 8 years old now. And I remember when the BBC released this map, and I don't know if you were a part of the rant, Owen, but I remember the likes of Jim O'Neill and a few others academics just looking at this map, and just because it was the BBC released it as a special 9 Year War special for the BBC History magazine, and they had this map in it, and I to be honest with you, I didn't think it was a great map, but I didn't think it was too bad. But the academics had gotten a hold of this map, and Jesus, they were having a fit and a half. Did you ever see this map, Owen?
No, I haven't.
I'll put it in all of its glory there. When I first looked at it, you can't really zoom. Sorry about that. You can't zoom in. There, you can zoom in a wee bit more. But yeah.
What's Dunboy Castle doing in Dublin?
Just a few seconds into it, and you're already ripping, shites out of it. But yeah, it's a funny map, all right. It could have been an amazing map, to be honest with you. And the problem is, as well, the reason why Dr. Jim O'Neill was having fits on it is they were quoting from his book back in the day. And he was like, I never said anything like this, or blah, 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 to the BBC. And sorry, I keep dragging up, what's his name? I'll see if I can pull. There we go. Now we can chuck Owen here. But yeah, they were referencing his work, and they were referencing work from UCC as well. Was it Morgan? They were referencing Morgan's work as well inside there. Because if you go to the back of the magazine, it says what their references and sources were. And they had Jim O'Neill's sources in there, and they had Morgan from UCC's work inside there as well. And the lads were having a fit at it, like, because the map, no, it was not for them, like.
Yeah.
But yeah. Go on.
It's not the best map. I'm not going to comment much on it. Just before the 9 Years' War, it's worth mentioning. We didn't. So at the end of the Second Desmond Rebellion, the Earl of Desmond is dead.
Yeah.
His land is confiscated, and they enact the Munster Plantation, which is the biggest plantation until then. And it's quite successful at first. Several thousand planters come in. And then as well as that, you have people like Tralee is given to, I think, Denny. Like, I think Macroom is set up, or if it's not set up, is rebuilt. and there's another place in Limerick. So you suddenly have a large-ish English population in Munster.
Mm.
And so the English are kind of considering, okay, Munster is under control because the other side of Munster, Ormond is pro-English, like sort of Kilkenny, Tipperary, and then parts of Waterford are all under control. So um, they then look at Connacht, and there's a guy called Richard Bingham who plays an important role for until 1600 when he dies. And they,
Yeah.
jumping massively ahead, they bring in the composition of Connacht, whereby they try to break up Connacht into small holdings. At this stage, the Thomond Clare is part of Connacht, but because Earl of Thomond is Protestant and basically very anglicized, he that's kind of ruled out. So it's essentially Galway, Mayo, and maybe part of Sligo, and they try to impose these terms, and it seems to be going well. And Richard Bingham, he essentially sets up his own lordship. I think his main base is Boyle. And that this is when what's her name, Gráinne Ní Mhailí becomes important because she's annoyed with him and fights with him, as do several of the lords. Many of the English in Dublin hate Bingham because he has come out of nowhere and suddenly he's building this thing, so they're jealous of him. And his government at this stage is completely divided between the Cecils and the Earl of Essex's crowd. I think Bingham was an Essex man. So this is when Grace O'Malley, Gráinne Wells, she goes to London. She doesn't meet. There's no record that she meets the Queen because.
Oh really?
Yeah. The Queen is not going to meet a very minor noble. So she went there, she submitted stuff, it got seen. And Bingham, I think, got told to behave himself. There's no record of their meeting. So if they had met, there would have been. This thing of the Pirate Queen, that's 19th century. O'Rourke got executed basically because they said he dragged a picture of Elizabeth through the mud. So Elizabeth was very, very, very jealous about her status. Anyone being called a queen gets executed. So Gráinne Whale was not a rebel. She had some clashes with Bingham. Her son Tibbet Malone Burke, he becomes important because he is a royalist. He's pro Elizabeth, and the Burkes kind of divide. Lord, Micheál has run away.
I know. I've seen that. He's gone rebuilding his laptop. I think
one of the Burkes.
That's just my camera.
One of the Burkes becomes Rickard. He gets the title, and he's pro-English, while O'Donnell recruits some from the other side because one of the Burkes gets killed. The guy who kills him suddenly becomes the English civilized lord. So there's a big division there. Tibbet Malone Burke, Gráinne Whale's son, is pro-English. And so you have this composition of Connacht, except that, and the English are all happy, and they kind of say, "Yay, that's like Leinster. Yeah, that's fairly much under control, apart from Fiach MacHugh and some of the O'Moores. Munster and Connacht are peaceful. Now we just saw that Ulster, and then everything starts to fall to pieces."
Oh no! I suppose we'll fly into the 9 Years' War now, especially since we only have 15 minutes left. Do you think we can cover the 9 Years' War in 15 minutes?
Not really. We have to talk about the Spanish Armada first. So the in the late 1580s, Lord Fitzwilliam
Mm.
is the Lord Deputy, and he is, to say he's corrupt is a bad gives corrupt people a bad name.
Mm.
So the 1588, yeah, she was a big cult of
Mm.
personality, a big cult of personality. So the Spanish Armada crash lands, a lot of them. The Spanish Armada crash lands along the north, the northwest, the southwest coast of Ireland,
Mm.
basically from Dunluce to Dingle. The ships that would have reached Dingle and the Blaskets would get home.
Mm.
The others, so you have large numbers of Spaniards being washed up, large
Mm.
numbers of armaments being washed up. The English government panics
Mm.
and basically orders the executed them, all the Spanish to be killed, and 99, I think 95% of them are killed. Some get home, like that captain de Cuellar.
Mm.
He gets brought. He manages to get to Scotland. A few get to Scotland from where they get home safe.
Mm.
But and others, like there's a guy called Pedro Blanco who ends up as a servant of Hugh O'Neill. He's present in many of Hugh O'Neill's battles. He's present in Kinsale. I think he only returns to Spain with the flight of the Earls. And there are a few others who wash up. Fitzwilliam probably gets lots of money at this stage because the amount these ships were carrying lots of coin, lots of treasure, and Fitzwilliam is pocketing as much as possible. And then he executes one of the MacMahons. Sort of, O'Neill now has become Earl of Tyrone. He's made Earl of Tyrone. He meets Elizabeth. He convinces her he's a good guy. He charms her. So he's given his grandfather's title. He's the second Earl of Tyrone. But he doesn't get on with Fitzwilliam, and especially he doesn't get on with Bagnall. Bagnall's father, I think, killed someone in England and ran away from justice, comes to Ireland. Conn O'Neill intervenes and gets a pardon from him. He sets himself up in Uri and is soon creating a big lordship for himself in Uri, taking on Gaelic clients. The Bagnalls are also the marshals of the army. They're nobodies, but they're on the council, they're on the Dublin Council. Hugh O'Neill, despite the fact that he's an earl, he has no rule in the kingdom at all. And then Bagnall starts talking about he's going to get positions in governing Ulster, which O'Neill doesn't like. Fitzwilliam decides to intervene in Monaghan because there's a bit of a problem going on with some of the MacMahons. The Monaghan was Gaelic Irish, was on the O'Neills. So apparently O'Neill paid a big bribe to Fitzwilliam to let this MacMahon go. And Fitzwilliam took the bribe and then hung the guy, and then puts in a minor reform in Monaghan, which really annoys O'Neill. So then O'Neill starts using Maguire because it looks like the English are going to move into Fermanagh next. And there's kind of a mad dance, and Maguire rebels, and then O'Neill and Bagnall are supposedly on the same side, going to fight. Whereas they're both kind of almost fighting each other, and O'Neill's going very slow. And in the end, there's a battle called the Battle of the Earn Fords, whereby Maguire's men are routed. But as James O'Neill points out, it's not Maguire's good men; it's his crappy soldiers. His good men have most of them have moved into Tyrconnell or Donegal, and so O'Neill is wounded in this battle, and then he writes a letter to the government praising everybody, including Bagnall, and then basically the relationship between O'Neill and Bagnall falls apart, and things get worse and worse, and then in the meantime, O'Neill has set up a confederacy among the Gaelic lords, which eventually he'll make into a Catholic confederacy. And that's when the war is about to start. Should we stop for now, do a few questions, and come back to the 9 Years' War next week? Because I'd say it's about 20 minutes to go through the war at least.
Yeah, we can easily do the 9 Years' War next week if you want to. Absolutely no problems. Yeah, that's what we can do. Yeah, because 9 Years' War alone, well, all of them are huge, massive topics, and we have about 10 minutes left, so we wouldn't really be able to go into any details or anything to do with the 9 Years' War. Just popping up to where's the Caveman's question went? Oh yeah, there he is. Caveman's question: what ships were the Irish using at around the time of Grace O'Malley? I looked it up in the background, and because I knew of Grace O'Malley's ships, but I never actually knew the name of it. It's called Shallow Draft Gallows is the name of it, and it's an upgrade to the Viking style ships that we had back in the early medieval period. Now, this is obviously the Renaissance, so they've upgraded those ships since then. So they're referred to as shallow draft gallows is what Grace O'Malley's ships were. And they were insanely good at maneuvering through the rocky gaps that were around the Connacht region. So they were very fast and nimble, much more faster.
The same ships that the Scots Isles, the people from the Isles would have been using. So you have like crossing over from Scotland often with mercenaries, but also with say gunpowder and stuff, going along the coast, the north coast. Then the O'Malleys and the O'Flahertys had these galleys, and they could sail down the coast and pop into the Shannon estuary, and the foil cast was very important because they would ships don't park, whatever ships do moor, is they would moor there and then send soldiers into Munster or goods. They wouldn't have been ships that could go very far out into the sea by themselves. They're coastal ships.
Fair enough. Just pumping over to this question here. Did the Spanish choose to remain in Ireland in Irish employ, or were they in tender? How do I pronounce that word? But anyway, regardless, I'm literally, I know the word, but I keep tripping over it in my pronunciation.
I think a lot of them would have being paid. Like Pedro Blanco was O'Neill's servant, and for many years. Because I think first of all, the ones that didn't get killed, get executed, were grateful. The other ones would have escaped. There's an interesting letter from, I think it's Captain Perez de Cuellar, about I think O'Rourke helped him escape. So some of the ones, they would have probably been paid. I imagine some lords would have said, okay, teach us how to use guns and stuff like that. But I would say most would have gone back. 10 years later, there would have been very few left.
Because there
was an increase.
Yeah, go on, Michal.
You go first, because I imagine.
No, I'm waffling shy. I'm just going to waffle shy.
No, I was just going to say the English did have a bit of an inquisition, and they sent officials to scour a lot of the parts of Ireland where they believed the Spanish, and interviewed sort of chieftains and stuff to find out how many Spaniards had survived or had been captured. Like Owen said, I think you said earlier they'd been killed. A lot of them were there was records of ones being washing up and just being robbed and killed. And for a multitude of reasons, it wasn't just simply because of like English affiliations. Some were doing it because of fear of reprisals for harboring Spanish survivors, and others would have just, like I said, been pro-English factions, etc. So but there was an inquisition put in to find them, and they didn't find what they were looking for.
Hard going.
Primal Patrician has an interesting question there. last O'Conn chief, Donald O'Conn, died in the Tower of London with no burial record. Have you any idea what would have happened to his remains? I went to London 2 years ago, and I wanted to make a video about this because Donald O'Conn, Neil Garve O'Donnell, Hugh O'Neill's brother, Cormac, and many other Gaelic lords were imprisoned in the Tower at various stages in the first years of James. Hugh O'Neill's son, who was young and they got left behind at the time of the Flight of the Earls, ended up there as well. They all died there. But I wanted to make a video about this because so many died. But like it's like £80 into the Tower of London. It's absurd. So
Jesus, I didn't realize it was that expensive.
it's really expensive. So maybe it's 50, but it's not cheap. So I didn't make that video. So what happened to his remains? Probably not. I imagine they just got thrown down a big hole and they threw quicklime or something on top of it, or else like there would have been over the years there would have been loads of prisoners dying in the Tower of London. Maybe if I'd gone on the tour, I would be able to answer that question.
Yeah, I know that a lot of sort of prisoners, officials are buried at St. Peter's, which is the parish church for the Tower. They may have records, but I obviously have. I've been to the Tower of London when I was younger, but you're talking a long time ago now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it with the questions and stuff today. Thanks very much, guys, for all of the comments and questions and feedback in the comment section. Absolutely worth a ton to us. And to Dr. Owen O'Neill, thank you for coming today. Micheál, I'm glad you're gone. Go on, get out. Just a pure troublemaker. What was it called? No, Micheál, thank you for coming today. Your insight into clans and dynasties, as always, especially when we're dealing with such a huge topic, obviously is worth a load to us. What's it called? Was it tomorrow? I'm back with Rachel again. We're going to be covering Anglo-Irish clothing. Well, actually, the Desmond Fitzgerald clothing, what the Desmond Fitzgeralds would have worn during the 15th century. So we're going to be covering Desmond Fitzgerald clothing in the 15th century with Rachel tomorrow.
What time is that at Dublin time?
That's going to be, I think it's sure like 1 a.m. or something. It's going to be late enough, like, because Rachel was like, I'm not doing early mornings again. No, it's her Christmas holidays, so she's not doing early mornings for herself. So she's going to be doing, I think it's about 1 a.m. Irish time. So unless you're willing to stay up until about 1 a.m., Micheál, for clothing in 15th century.
No, I just, I have a video. I'm doing my members only live tomorrow, and it's about this period as well in Munster. So the family's involved in it. And so I was just going to say that I didn't want us to overlap, so that anyone watching my video could then go onto yours.
No. Yeah.
No, so they can get a bit more context about what I'm talking about. So.
Nice. Yeah, definitely send them over. I have no problems covering questions full stop. But yeah, it's going to be Rachel tomorrow for Anglo clothing. Then the Friday night, if you're living in Ireland, 9 o'clock, it will be myself, Owen O'Neill, and Micheál again covering families and clans and just having an overall discussion. So definitely come in and have your old questions and stuff, just general questions, anything to do with Irish medieval history. Definitely pop in there, or anything to do with families and dynasties and stuff. Definitely pop in for the Saturday. That'll be for the first 2 hours, and then the second 2 hours, the boys will go off to bed, and I will jump in with Rachel to cover just general medieval history. So definitely pop in questions as well. Then on top of that as well, I'm back with Mel Shields, Dr. Melissa Shields. We're going to be covering 16th century Desmond Fitzgerald clothing. So definitely have all your questions and stuff for that one. And that was Irish time on the 20th at 9 o'clock. So on the 20th at 9 o'clock, we'll be there with Dr. Melissa Shields covering Desmond Fitzgerald clothing, during the 16th century. Okay, so that's Anglo-Irish clothing, and that's going to be us then until the 24th of December, when we're going to have our Christmas special. I think Rachel wants to move the timing for that a little bit up, which might push the two poor lads to the side, because originally we were going to go for 9 o'clock, but then Rachel wants to stay in because of Christmas and stuff, so it might be a bit later. We'll see. We'll see about the time up for that one, and that will be on the 24th, on Christmas Eve. We'll have another live, and then on the 27th I'm going on holidays. Bye, lads. So my Christmas holiday starts on the 27th, which is just slightly after, because Christmas will be on the 26th, so I'll be in Okinawa on the 26th, and then on the 27th I'll be going off to mainland Japan. I think myself and the wife want to look at Jesuits and all this kind of stuff as well. Trading to do with Europe and Japan on mainland, but that's our own business. We'd be off holidaying at that point. Other than that, guys, thank you so much for all that. And of course, if you want to support my channel, definitely head on to, you can either give me a subscription here, whatever money and donations you'd like, would definitely be 100% great, especially for books going into Christmas and stuff. Definitely. Thank you for that one. And of course, I'd much rather if you pop over to my Patreon at Irish Medieval History, just because I get a much more fair cut on Patreon. And also on top of that as well, if you donate 20 quid, you can easily hop into my classes as well. I do classes every Sunday, and that's 20 quid a month. Definitely well worth it. This weekend on the Sunday, we shall be covering William Marshall and Isabel de Clare. So definitely huge, massive topics we'll be covering there over on my Patreon. Dr. Owen O'Neill, how can our viewers support you?
Oh, you could watch my videos and click like, leave comments. Tomorrow, I'm actually having a live stream at 7 o'clock, just questions and answers about Irish history.
Nice.
And hopefully on Sunday, I'm bringing out a long video. I'm trying to do something different, a walk and talk about Valencia history. So
yeah.
The sun came out for 2 days, for like a day and a half. I tried to run around in between showers filming. And then I have a buy me a coffee account.
Oh yeah.
And it's my birthday next Tuesday, so if you want to buy me a beer, that's fine.
That'd be a nice one. Although beer's gone up in Ireland, hasn't it, with the housing crisis and stuff. So yeah, sadly we're not living in an era where a beer is how much was it? It used to be like 90 cents and stuff back in the day, and now it's like almost the equivalent of $10 in Ireland. It's absolutely ridiculous now these days.
No, I think it's less than €6 down here. I mean, Guinness is cheaper.
Absolutely wild. Anyway, we won't bother asking Michal. He'll say something about some live stream or something, or some private event or something. I don't know. Michal, what are you running there? What's going on?
No, just if you're a sport channel, like come across, get the members on YouTube, and we do a members only live every Thursday. This week we're doing, if you want to see what that sort of consists of, I did make last week's one free for anyone to view, so you can get an idea. But this week we're covering this period again, but primarily just focusing on Munster and the families involved in it, so as many families as we can get involved in it. So I will be it's normally somewhere between 10 and 11, so keep your notifications on. So it'll be after Owen's live, so if you're looking for a night filled of Irish history, you can get Owen's live in, you can get my live in, and then you can get Philip's live at 1 a.m. So because it'll be finished just for 1. So
if we tried to plan this, it would have been impossible.
So yeah, just come across, become a member. I have really cheap tiers, so because any help is great help. So yeah.
Happy days. And Jim, don't worry about that one. I think the biggest problem with today was the fact that it was just a long running stretch for 2 hours. So it was very difficult to be able to take in the information and then ask questions of. So don't worry about that, Jim. That was the same with poor Ned at the start, having a complete panic attack in the comment section, not being able to keep up with the speed we were sprinting through, especially Dr. Owen O'Neill. who specializes in it, so he's able to sprint up. So I do apologize for people who weren't able to keep up today. We kind of just wanted to have the very basics of the Tudor conquest of Ireland, and yeah, it can be quite difficult to do that, especially when we're sprinting off. So I do apologize about that. But yeah, next week it should be a lot more easier to get a grasp the basics of it, simply because we'll be focusing more on the 9 Years' War next week. So next week, on the are we doing next week? Today is the 18th, 25th. So yeah, next month. So next month, the start of next year, we'll cover the 9 Years' War, and we'll go into more detail about that. We won't be able to do a live stream next week because we have Christmas. But yeah, after that one, we shall be doing the 9 Years' War. So next year, we'll be doing the next. If you can wait until next year, we'll cover the 9 Years' War into greater detail. Other than that, guys, thank you so much and all the best. Slán go bhfuil.
Slán everyone.
Bye.
Slán.